I'm trying. I won't screw back on. There it is.
I wanted to catch you in the moment.
I wasn't prepared.
Yes. Hi, welcome back to the Always Right podcast. I'm author Carissa DeLay.
And I'm author Jamie Vendera, and we have a kind of a cool little subject to discuss today.
Fitting for what you've been doing as well.
No kidding. No kidding.
Yeah.
So what are we discussing? I done forgot my ADHD kicked in.
Theme plotting.
Oh, yes.
And when I thought of this, I thought of how familiar are you with Christmas Story?
You mean with the lampshade and all that? Oh,
Yeah.
pretty familiar.
Yeah, so are we. And I've done the tattoos for it, and our family watches it. It's just kind of a household, tradition
You'll
here.
put your eye out, yes.
You'll shoot your eye out. But when I was thinking this, I was thinking about when he was like, the teacher said the subject or the assignment was to write a theme. He's like, theme. It's like a theme was her exciting, this theme of him writing about getting this Red Ryder BB gun. So I was thinking about plotting out your theme for your storyline, and how does that work for you?
I really
You're doing
wish
that right now.
for me, I had this system because that's what this podcast is about. But no, I'm just insanely nuts. I was talking to Daniel Middleton the other day. By the way, I'm working on Age of the Sigil. If none of you figured that out by now, because we only mentioned it a million times.
Mm-hmm.
So the fourth book to complete that series. And we made a map because in fantasy, I love Terry Brooks, and they made a map of the four lands. So I wanted to do the same with Ostrand and the Northlands, the the Southland Annex, and the West and East Aspris, and all of that. And if you got the books, you know what I'm talking about. So every book I kind of show you where they're going to, where these four sigils are going to do their quests. And I told Daniel, I said, I really want you to re-illustrate this. He done a good job. I said, but I want it a little more detailed, just kind of expand it because we have a lot more names to add on there. And he says to me, he says, your brain, he said, I loved in the past Sigil or Order of Five or whatever. He says, when you were explaining this to me, he said, it's like you created in the moment. And I do. I don't really totally plot out things. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think ooh, what am I going to write my fantasy book about? Oh, a sword and a dragon. It just comes to me, and then I start shaping it. And I don't do it like I do my nonfiction books. If I have a nonfiction book, I know exactly what I'm teaching, and I will start with 10 steps, in order. Like if I'm going to give a workshop, how am I going to do that? I loosely kind of do that when I'm doing themes, but it's not like I don't force it. I'm like, oh, okay, I got 4 teenagers. They got these magical tattoos. Oh, they're in Australia, but we're going to call it Austrian because it's a million years ago. And da. And I'm doing all of this stuff, and I fill in the blanks, and then I wait until I get into the story, like watching a new movie, and let it unfold before me. So really, there's no rhyme or reason to that. That's not much help for those of you who are listening. But what I will say is if I'm writing a series that has more than one book, once I've written that first one, I have so much to feed off of. And I'll go back and I'll reread it, and I'll make almost a guide, a list of the characters, any magical attributes they have, whether they have a magical bow or they can do spells. Is there any made up words? How does the town look that they went to? Like there may be a town that's built into the mountains, or maybe it's a place like one that I call Trimna, that's a floating sky city that exists on clouds that only the windwalkers can walk among without falling through. So I will keep track of that. And what I do is I look for golden opportunities to reuse even minor characters, to let them build for the next book in the series, or revisiting or repeating words. Like I got a word like, oh, Fuddlepuck. And in Sigil, that's a curse word, so we repeat that a lot, so these teenagers are always cursing, but not really. So I look at that, and then I keep building upon that. And so if I have that first book and I have all my notes, then I do start to develop a theme. Like, oh, where was I leading these characters? I know I'm leading them now to the south, and what could be down there? Ooh, well, Antarctica is made of ice, so maybe I can put something in there about the ice, the area of ice that's not really Antarctica. So I always try to build my themes like that. It starts organically, and then I refer to the previous book to help me develop themes as I go forward.
Well, let me ask you this. So when you are writing, so particularly Age of the Sigil, I know there's symbols that are tattooed.
Yep.
Are these, yeah, the tattooed? You've created this imagery of these tattoos. Is it the theme is pretty consistent though through all of the books, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Because one thing, if you're writing a series, you definitely have to double and triple check everything you say. Like we have a great editor, as you know, Rich Dalglish, but even as a human, he's not going to catch everything. And I'm going back through the book, so I'm making notes like, oh, there's a couple little typos here and there. One of the typos I caught was this young teenager named Reeve Onid, who was an orphan who lived as a wizard's apprentice. He wasn't really good, but the reason being is because he actually was a descendant of the ancient language of the first wizards. So all these new spells didn't work well for him because he was a natural. He truly had wizard blood in him. So he had this magical scroll tattoo appear on his right arm. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking meticulously at everything, and I cannot believe I didn't catch this or Rich didn't catch it. Boom, there's one scene where I say, Reeve removed the scroll sigil from his left arm. And I was like,
Oh,
oh my gosh, why didn't we catch that?
you put it on the wrong arm.
Put it on the wrong arm, but I caught it, Or if I make up like Deloria Kildry, she's a Vassarine, which is a princess back in olden times. She has a magical necklace tattoo around her throat, so she can speak to animals. She
Mm-hmm.
can scream so loud she can blow things up. Don't know where I got that idea, but
Canary.
she has dragon speak. She has a baby dragon who's bonded to her, and she learns this language, and she
Mm-hmm.
calls out, and she can roar and make things happen. She can make a vortex appear, and dragons can fly through it. So I caught another spot where there was a word like a lordai, Lordei, or something like that, and I typed so fast that sometimes I'll hit the M, and it was Malordai. And I'm like, what? Okay, nobody else may not catch that but me, but I'm like, yes, meticulously check every word. If you're creating a fantasy world or a space opera or whatever, and you come up with new attributes to the way they look, to the way they sound, to their mannerisms, to a new language, you have to double check that to make sure your theme sticks, because you develop a fan base, and I promise you, they're going to
They
catch
will.
this and they're going
Mm-hmm.
to eat you alive. Why did you do this?
So you mentioned a lot about these themed character developments, but what about like a plot that does like moral values that are being presented or the journey that your characters are on? Do you create like a theme for each separate book and then one big one for the end? How do you do that?
I mean, with that, it's morals like good and evil in the world, word versus the void. So, they start out as teenagers. Of course, they're learning. Pem the
Mhm.
Knife, for example, is one of the characters, and he don't remember anything before the age of 10, and he was raised by some thieves, and that's all he knew. Thieving. I mean, he's probably killed quite a few people back, but we don't mention that in the book. Really bad seed. But as he's going along, and then he gets this knife sigil on his arm, and he's being called by this wizard named Illendale, things start to change. Like, they're like, hey, we can sneak in and steal some bread. And he's like, I don't feel right about that anymore. So things are changing in him.
Okay, that's cool.
We do it. I did the duology book, Phoenix Earth, and actually, Daniel and I was planning it. I was like, look, I want to talk about racism. I spent a year in Alabama as a child, and I remember this very vividly. It was the first time I really went to church, given a Bible, and it was a white family. So won't mention any names. I love all these people still this day, but back then in the '70s in Alabama, it was pretty segregated still. So I had a African American friend, Teddy, and I had a white friend. And I remember Teddy came over one day, and we're coming out to play, and my white friend looks up and says, "What are you doing here? You can't be here. You're black." And I'm like 8 years old. It destroyed me. And I went home, and that boy came over later to apologize. I slammed the door in his face, and we made up later. But it was just like, that was been ingrained in me since I was a child, and that kind of bugged me. And I remember talking to Daniel about this, and he said, as I'm writing Phoenix Earth, which is about Earthlings, destroyed the Earth. They had to leave. They found this planet called Malachar, and who accepted them in, but very segregated. They're like, hey, you're not breeding or mixing with our Malakarans. And it did happen, and you had an off, they could bond, they had children, and they were mixed. They're called Maluans, and they were treated really bad to the point they were looking at mass genocide, and that, the Maluans, they had left that planet. And
that's an interesting take on like using the alien world with, things like that. Like, and I guess I didn't think about that. Like thinking of different alien species mixing together.
Yeah, well, I mean, look at how we are here on Earth, and when I do write a book, I typically do have kind of a theme idea, whether it's a moral thing or whatever that I want to develop. With the Moment of Death series, Daniel and I kind of plotted that together, and it's pretty out there. It's pretty gory, but at the end we find out it's these doctors using psychotropic drugs to and make these visions think they're happening, where people are getting killed and they're on a plane and they're dying, and all these weird things over the 7 deadly sins appear, and it's shown like how corruption in that, like it kind of, I really don't want to say this, but like there's a lot of stuff on the market that's not good for you. Hey, take this drug for your heart, but be forewarned, it's going to kill your liver and your skin and this and that. And I'm like, look at what we've done to ourselves over the year. Now, I'm not saying modern medicine isn't good, but that or drugs. And so we wanted to kind of put that theme in there, like, hey, look what us playing scientists can do. So people may not catch that until they get to the very last book. The last book is called Moment of Death. So overall, whenever I come up with something, I do have just a light vision of how I want the book to start, where I want it to end. But for me to sit here, and it may be different for you, Krista, but I can't plot point it out and tell someone watching the podcast, this is what I would do, because you know me, I'm so ADHD, I'm all over the place, and they're popping into my mind all the time. JDHD, yes. Sorry. So
Yeah.
So I mean, here you are, you've written Crystal Gate, Four Rivers. How was your approach to that, to laying out this theme?
But my approach was a little different for the fact that I had my ending when I had the dream to write Crystal Gate. I had to create the storyline. So I had to plot the pathway to get to the ending. How many water bottles do you have?
I just got the one big one today, but the top one's screwed off. So I'm going to leave it off because you know me, and I'm like an auctioneer right now, and I'm going to drink so much of it that's going to be in my hand most of the time anyway. Boom.
Next week when we meet with that storyboard designer for the episode,
I'm not allowed to talk.
No, we should ask her if she would like to illustrate the JDHD adventures.
That would be cool. And mind you, I want everybody to know I am not on caffeine. It's just this comes in spurts. And you know why?
You have a reverse effect of caffeine. Like you take caffeine, be like, I'm so groggy.
That usually does. I could probably drink a 5-hour energy and go to sleep. So that's some messed up stuff. But this happens to me like I'm more alive when I'm writing. And I've really missed it. Now that I'm back in Sigil, I'm like, okay.
Yeah, for those who were listening, I messaged Jamie and said, okay, I'm on, like, I'm going to go grab my drink, and then I'm loading in. And he's like, I guess I'll stop reading, and blah, blah, blah. Like, oh, so sorry, I'm making you work.
I'm like, what do you want, Chris? A podcast, or do you want me to finish this book?
I want both.
Yes.
I like cake and icing, period.
Yep. Don't talk about food. I'm doing a 3-day fast. I started today.
Oh, so, I cannot do maybe cake. A 3-minute fast. I can't do 3 days.
Oh, this will be my second one this year. So.
Well, yes, because I remember you doing that not too long ago, and it's like, okay, whatever. You go through.
Yep.
I'll vicariously do that through you because I ain't doing that.
No, I'm still here. I'm still fat.
Longest I fast might be like as I'm sleeping.
Yes, I fasted for 8 hours, Jamie. What more do you want?
Yeah, I mean, geez, I stopped eating at 8. Okay, so for me, with plotting points, and I have to have I have an idea for a book because we wrote down several in our Google Docs and things like that. But I have an idea, but I can't pull the storyline out until I have the plot twist. I have to have a theme and a plot twist already put in place. You know, and I told you and Rich when we recorded with Rich last week, I told you the plot twist with Canvas and how that kind of manifested or whatever. And it's kind of the same idea with Crystal Gate. I had the ending of the devil falling in love with a mortal that would eventually be the reason he chose to be bound for 1,000 years. I just had to create the storyline around it. I had to put in some different aspects. And when you're talking about like moral decisions, when you're creating a theme, there was a chapter I remember there was all of Crystal Gate, and you know she experienced a lot of things, a lot of otherworldly things. She basically went through an angelic realm. So there's different things she's experienced, knowing God is in existence, and yet comes out back into the mortal plane and decides to do something that some people would think is immoral. You know, immoral. Um, and my husband even asked me, I remember I was sitting at the dining room table, he's like, I'm really surprised that you had her do that after everything she went through and everything she's experienced, that she still did that. And I was like, well, that's where you lose the definition of free agency, that free agency is still a choice. Even if you know right from wrong, you can still choose to do wrong, or you can still choose to do the opposite. It's still free choice. And I said that was the theme, was even though these things were faced, and my character was faced with certain things in what people thought she should choose, doesn't guarantee she's going to choose that.
Plus, it makes for a good book because it's if you would have been the opposite, be like, I seen that coming. I knew that's where she was going.
Yeah.
So for you to flip flop it, it's like, oh yeah, that I didn't see that coming.
That is something with a couple of the authors that I've talked to, especially the one that we're working with the fantasy book. With her, something I've told her, because when we were talking about her storyline, she has this beautiful outline, this beautiful theme going. She's plotted different things and she's working along the way, and she's like, now in book 3, when I get to this, you know, it's this. She's either going to have to do this or this. I'm like, why? Why can't you have option 3 that your reader doesn't see coming? I'm like, you've led me in 2 pathways of which this could go. I said, give me a third. Give me a third option. She's like, that's a better idea. Like, yeah, because then you don't know which way it's going to go. It's not a 50-50.
I agree. It's a little tough for me. I wish I could do that. I wish I could plot it out, but I remember being younger and wanting to write a book. I had a friend, David Noble, who inspired me. He was always writing. Love you, David. I love you, love you, love you. But I don't think he ever finished anything. And when I started writing, even before that, I remember writing a few fiction things and having a grandiose idea, and I could never get it to the end. And I think it's because, for me, this is probably not for everybody, I felt like stressed, like here's what I want to write, and I got to get it there, and I was reviewing every paragraph, trying to make it perfect. I don't live in that world. If I come up with an overall arcing idea, like when we did Phoenix Earth, and I was talking to Daniel, I was like, look, here's what I see, because it ties into like Crisis Artifact, shifters and everything, because it's way in the future. Earth is destroyed. It's kind of growing back, but we don't know that for thousands of years. And the Earthlings leave. I'm like, I want them to find another planet, and I do want them to intermix, and then there be some racism, and planetary racism, like they're wanting to kill everybody off. And he's like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. And that's as far as I knew. That was it. I didn't have any names for characters. And that's another one I wouldn't mind even doing some other books and developing like a guide and going through the notes, because I created a language. There's, fruits like veluines that were in there. And I could see this fruit and almost taste it. And it's like nothing on earth. And I remember being like, oh my gosh, I want a veluine, so, but I didn't know it.
It's pretty good when you want something in your book that you can't have.
I know. And I didn't even know it. It wasn't like plotting it. It was like, okay, here's the overall theme. We're leaving Earth, another planet. They hate us. We're coming back, and we also destroyed Mars before we did Earth. But hey, we may fix that in the future as well. So, and that was it. That's all I had, in fact, Daniel with Sigil, he came up with the name, because we started writing together. He's the Age of the Sigil, and my brain exploded, and we were supposed to be writing it together.
Great name, by the way.
He would do what?
It's a great name. I like it.
Oh, I loved it. Yeah. And we had an initial conversation, and back and forth. I'm like, oh, these teenagers. They're like, yeah, that's cool. Okay, what are the tattoos? Well, I said, they got tattoos. He said, yes, on their bodies. And we came up with that. And that was about it, because he was busy doing covers and the websites. But we would have these brainstorms where we get together, and I would tell him what I was thinking. And I was right. He's like, dude, your brain is crazy. And he's like, ooh, what if? Da 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 da. And he would give me names like Lord Drayden. He came up with that. And from him coming up with fantasy names for me, I remember having this discussion. Like, I don't. How do you create them? And he's like, oh, I look at other ones do this and that. And I'm like, yeah, I just got to make this stuff up. It just said blah 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 blah. It starts coming out, but like I said, it's like I'm watching a movie I've never seen, and that's how I plot my themes, organically.
Speaking of theme plotting, so I don't know if you could see this. I'm gonna turn my computer just a little bit. Do you see my murder board up there?
Yes, it's blurry, but yes, I see it. Is that for Canvas?
No, it's for London.
What?
That's my mapping out of everywhere we're going, and I had to like create a murder board for it because it's like, oh, this one connects to this one. Here's where this one's going.
Speaking of which, why did you switch?
There's an app for it, but I'm using the old-fashioned way.
I think you told me why you switched weekends for the concert already.
Oh yeah, because we're in Orlando for volleyball.
That's right. So you had to buy new tickets and sell, and you're selling the older ones. Yeah, that's crazy. But I'm sure they're not priced over there like they are over here.
Oh my gosh, no.
Yes.
I mean, that's what I'm trying to tell people. Like, listen, go to London. Which we're going to Liverpool to see the concert, but we got front row tickets or like floor tickets. There's no technical front row because there's no row. It's all standing. All of our front row stuff is standing, but front like standing floor tickets here, you're gonna pay like $9,000 here in America for something like that. Over there, I think for the first set of tickets, it cost me $1,800. I think for 2 tickets, floor, early entrance, and those are the ones I'm selling. Then I bought for the weekend before. Now that we're going in Liverpool, and those tickets were like maybe $1,400.
Yeah. I mean, it's still expensive, and people got to realize it's not Taylor Swift driving up this price. Of course, she has a minimum charge she has to pay, but look at the production.
Well, the venues do it.
Exactly. And in America, if it was
Taylor Swift driving it up, if it's the person driving it up, it would be the same every place, but it's not. Every venue is different. So, yeah. But either way, it's an experience, and we're super excited. Zayden and I sat on the living room floor the other night and with our cats and made friendship bracelets and stuff. So, well, she had a bunch of them made up ahead of time, and I was late to the game as far as having time to do it, but we did do that the other night and made a few bracelets and listened to the album and a few in a serial killer podcast.
Wow, what a combination.
I mean, you like what you like.
So if somebody's trying to, and I'm not the one to answer this, it's definitely you, they got an idea for a book about a haunted house or something. You can pick anything. What advice could you offer them for theme plotting?
My advice would be, what are you offering the reader that's going to bring them in? What is your selling point? It all comes down to what we've talked about recently in your when we were talking about the back of the book. You have to have that 30-second selling point. Okay? 30-second selling point, and then go out from that if you want to expand from that. Give me the 30-second selling point that is going to want me to read your book. What is that? Like when you have a book idea and you're like, oh, a book idea where the people are this. Okay, but what about them? You're just going to tell me about people because it's just an autobiography of those people. Tell me what the plot twist is. Yeah, so I mean, it's kind of like you have to decide what you're catching, what's your lure. What are you putting on the fishing lure to bait people into your book? What is that plot twist? Or it shouldn't be the plot twist, because the plot twist obviously you want in the writing. What is the theme selling point? Yeah,
and if I can offer anything, it's just like what I said. Right now, my Age of the Sigil notes, and I'm rereading, so there's 3 books. I'm about a 4th way through book 3. I have 12 pages of notes, not like It's the list of all the places, all the characters, the magic items, the new words, the dragon speak, the spells. So as you're writing your book, even if it's just a one-off, I would make sure I'd keep notes on the name of your characters, any how they look, any mannerisms they have. If they walk with a limp on the right leg, you need to keep track of that and just have it to the side, because you never know how long it's going to take you to write your first book. You may get aggravated and you'll be out of it for 6 months, or you're flying through and you finished it in 2 weeks, but then you need to go back and check it. And I'd have that list there just to make sure you don't do something like I've done and put like a tattoo on the wrong arm when left arm when it's always been on the right arm. So that way you have that continuity. Plus,
if you're a digital person, you can create a whole notes section for each character with a little column that has everything listed to the side. If you are a handwriting person, keep you a notebook with little tabs on it.
Absolutely. Theme. Definitely write more than one book, though.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of like whenever we've talked about when you're in a grouping of books that's oversaturated, like vampire books. Catherine took a bigger pool of books, but somehow found a way to separate herself out and have a personal journal of a vampire, like essentially like a personal outlook from the vampire's perspective of his life versus some kind of like major theme of, even though there's a bunch of stuff happening in the book, there's fighting and love and all that stuff. It's more of his storyline. So she does have these things in there that kind of keep you going, but at the same time, she found a way to separate it from the masses.
Yeah,
so find a way to separate yourself.
And especially in today's age, there are a gazillion vampire books, and she found a way to write hers from a unique perspective, to try to separate it. And honestly, whatever your theme is, whatever you're writing about, try to make it unique. I can't really say, I can and I cannot say Age of the Sigil is unique. I make the line, and I really don't like doing this because we wouldn't do it as a keyword, but people are like, what is it like? I said, it's like kind of like Lord of the Rings for kids. But it's not really, it's more like Harry Potter, but a million years ago. So
that's a great point, though, when Harry Potter meets, Lord of the Rings, because a lot of people like both. And when I was re-updating some of the stuff that's on the book lines for KDP, that'd be a really good little catch line. If you like Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings, but don't have time to sit and read new books, these are a great quick read.
Yeah, and you know what? Something like that I'm cool with. This is probably a topic for a whole nother podcast, but what drives me nuts is when you see an ad for a book and they're like, if you love Harry Potter, this is the next Harry Potter, and they're like, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings. So that drives me nuts. I'm like, no.
Well, yeah, I see a lot of those for like Twilight and Harry Potter for sure, and Hunger Games and
50 Shades of Grey. I mean, there were so many that everybody, as soon as those authors had movies out or the books were selling, everyone was using their title as a tag. And like, I've written the next, if you're done with Harry Potter or 50 Shades of Grey, you're going to love this because it's the next best thing. Maybe it is, but you know what? Make it stand on its own. But something like saying, hey, if you're into books like Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings, you want something kind of in between, I'm fine with that. I would never call my book that's why I said I don't like saying Lord of the Rings for kids, because it's really not, so.
Yeah. So basically make a list of some of your ideas, your concepts, your symbols like you have in your book, and kind of think of ways you can connect them. Think of ways that you can create a murder board. Think of ways that these things fit together. So that way you're like, oh, but I really want this. And if it doesn't really fit or tie into the theme, you may need to put it as a offshoot of your book down the road. Or if you're writing a series, it's kind of in a way like when we talked about comic books have smaller themes through each volume. And then at the end, there's this greater, boss that you're fighting essentially. It's the same if you're writing a series, that if you have small little things happening in each book, you got to make sure you have these small things that they're battling and like these little cliffhangers. And then at the end, there's the ultimate, like where this book line was headed. So you got to kind of keep that in mind.
It's so funny you say that. So when we wrote Order of Five, since they're TV books and they have 13 episodes or 13 chapters.
Mhm.
I remember, I don't know how we got on this. I know what it was. Daniel was talking about, hey, we ought to write something that's free. And I'm like, I can do that. I could write like a pre-chapter to book one that's like 20, 30 years ago that talks about this character, Eleazar Benton, who's older now and takes care of these teen mutants. And when we did, and the characters I put in there, I was like, huh, those would make for a good book. And you know what? That's how Shifters came to be.
Mm.
And since I started writing that, like in the second book of Order of Five, I literally tied in a bit about the characters from Shifters in with that. So I'd like to do a lot of crossovers from book to book to keep it in
Yeah.
one world. But yeah, and there was a theme that came out of that, just of me writing one bonus chapter. So, just like Carissa said, if it doesn't fit your book, hold on to it, put it to the side, because it could be an offshoot.
Yeah. So that's something that some people don't realize in the Twilight books, that there's a book offshoot, and it was the diary of one of the characters that is so sub-tertiary that you don't even realize this is really a character. And they put it in the movie, but there's a little tiny book. It's oh my gosh, the character's name was Bree, but you get to see this innocent little vampire, like a young teenager, who's turned against her will, obviously, for this army she doesn't even want to fight in, and it's like almost a little sub storyline of what she's going through, and you're like, really don't know what's happening with this character, because she's not really a character in the regular books. So it's pretty cool when Stephenie Meyer did that. I was like, oh, that's great. So I read it, and then my kiddo read it. It's really it's just a good idea. And I thought, well, that's kind of a cool idea to take one of your characters. Maybe they mention having a diary, or maybe they mention something small in a chapter, and then you write a whole separate system off of that one little line. That you don't even know what's like. Maybe there's a small conspiracy happening that this person just uncovers, and then you write a whole nother thing about that. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah, and fan fiction happens all the time. I
Mm-hmm.
ever wonder if she looks like, wow, why didn't I think of that? From
Mm-hmm.
Twilight. Or I remember, of course, it's even in film. I seen this thing about Snape when he was a teenager, and
Mm.
actually he was like 19 or so, and it was made so good. And I'm like,
Yeah,
I wonder if they wrote that. I wonder if she,
like a fan fiction.
yeah, I wonder if she ever considers taking fan fiction. She's done The Cursed Child, but I wonder if she's like, I
And
want to get
turns
with.
Adam Driver into the young Snape.
Yes, oh, that would be cool. Yes, indeed.
Yeah. So, okay, basically remember that creating a theme takes time and experimentation with your characters and everything that you're having going on, making sure that it fits. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're developing it. That's what we're trying to get across. That you can either do it like JDHD and just chaotic and hope it works out.
It does for me.
Yes. And that's the beauty of this podcast, is you get two aspects. You get someone who has functioning ADHD that keeps it organized, and
And you got
the other person
me.
who's all over the place. But yes, definitely be open to exploring new angles and stuff like that. Set on it. Maybe go listen to some music.
Sorry. Let me do it again.
Listen to Jamie unscrew his water bottle and screw it back on. Oh my gosh. I think I prefer the water bottles over the jug, because the jug is like loud.
Yep.
All right. As always, we're very thankful that you listen and you follow. And this has been a good informative episode on just theme writing and what we do as far as authors in our books, and the different takes on the do's and the don'ts from our perspectives. But it basically comes down to you and making sure everything fits. But if you have questions, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, and I mentioned this to you the other day, I think I'm going to start, and maybe we'll share it on the Always Right page, like a little videography as I finish the fourth book, and talk about how I've done the theme and taking all the notes to kind of give you a little more insight into my way of thinking, and hopefully it inspires you to keep better notes, to plot better worlds, and keep your fingers crossed I do that. But I'm pretty sure I'm going to.
That'd be good. Yeah.
Yep.
Share that to the page. That'd be nice. But if you have other questions about your themes or any other topics that we've had on the Always Right podcast, feel free to reach out to us at our email, which is always alwaysrightpodcast@gmail.com. Or you can click on our website. Woo! There was some lightning.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, so we have some severe storms in the area and like tornado warnings and stuff like that. And here on base, we have the sirens and they have the big voice that speaks over top of it. And they were saying something earlier. I don't know what they were saying. Ooh,
I can hear it.
yeah. Yeah. There's the thunder. Oh, I just had him.
Broadcast. Alert.
Yes. Thunderstorms warming in effect until 11:15 p.m. That's like 45 minutes. Okay.
No,
Well,
it's not really, because
holy crap.
that would be 12 hours and 45 minutes.
Oh, no.
You just said 11
p.m. 11:15. Oh, a.m.
There we go.
Here. Yeah. But it says
attention to detail.
Listen, 80-mile-an-hour winds.
What?
Yes, that's what it says. Destructive
Wow.
80. Holy crap. Take shelter in sturdy building away from windows. Flying debris may... What the flip?
All I can say is make sure that this podcast downloads, because that's the most important thing. No, I didn't say Jesus.
This may be my last episode. Load it up. All right, back on track. So if you want to find any episodes or find out where you can listen to us or stream us, you can go to www.alwaysrightpodcast.com. Click on all those little icons right there, and you can also check out some of our books that we've talked about that are on there for Jamie or I or any of our other authors on Vendera Publishing. So thank you for listening. As always, this is author Carissa DeLay.
I'm author JDHD, and we'll see you in the next podcast.
Thank you for listening.